Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. I am Sean Davis. You all can follow me on Twitter or X now. Let me know in the comments section down below which one it is. In today's video, I'm going to break down what, in my opinion, are the 5 worst contracts in the NBA. But a quick reminder before we get started, please do subscribe right here to the NBA Front Office Show's YouTube channel and ring that post notification bell for more. But with that being said, let's dive in here. And there's a few different categories, if you will, or not categories, but things that I factored in when making my list. I factored in current value on said deal. In terms of like what your production level is at this stage of your NBA career. I think how much you're making does matter. In terms of like your average and based off like if that's fair based off your production, give you your production. I think the length also matters, and the length is partially why guys like Tobias Harris won't make the cut. It was a really, really bad contract, but I don't think it's top 5 worst anymore. He's not valuable, right? But is at the very least an expiring contract. So, like we saw kind of a Russell Westbrook last season, if there was a team interested, I do think you could get off that contract because it is the expiring deal. And yeah, so it's gonna be a ton of fun. Let's dive into this. Let's start with an honorable mention, a couple of them actually. I'm gonna start off with number 1, Dillon Brooks. 4-year, up to $87 million deal for Dillon Brooks. I'm gonna play devil's advocate. Like if he's playing at his peak of his powers, this is a fair deal. You're looking at a guy that is an all NBA caliber defender who is a top 10 perimeter defender in the NBA and a guy that could average 10 to 15 points a game potentially, right? And the $7 million, like I believe it's incentives or whatever. It is a straightforward no, it's not straightforward. It's front loaded. So when he starts to get a little bit older, you'll save some money on your tax sheet, on your cap sheet, excuse me. So I don't know. I kind of, clown them as much as everybody else did, but I think that's really because of the playoff run he had. I think Dillon Brooks is a good NBA player, particularly because of what he can provide defensively. Hopefully, the jumper for his sake comes back around. But number 5 for me is, I don't know if this is a hot take, but I do think it's Kevin Durant. And I think partially because the length, I think right now I want to say it was around $47 million. Kevin Durant at $47 million right now still isn't terrible. Like that's fair value right now, right? But I do think that Kevin Durant, as early as next season, we might start seeing a decline from Kevin Durant. I truly don't think he's the same player he was even back in 2021 in Brooklyn. I really do believe that. I don't think his tape has been as strong since then. So to me, the notion that he's still a top 5 player, top 3 player is kind of crazy. But I think right now it's fair. But I think with his struggles to get to the rim at this stage of his career, and where he's so heavily relying on the shot making, to where in previous stages of his career he could get to the rim pretty easily. I do really think that Kevin Durant has started very slowly. He's still a top 10 player, top 8 to 9 player, if that helps you. But I do think we're gonna look at this in about a year, actually in a year, and be like, I don't know how I feel about Kevin Durant making that type of money. His teammate Bradley Beal is number 4 on my list. 5-year at the time of the extension, 5-year, $251 million deal, and it still has the no trade clause. He uses it to get to Phoenix, and we thought that it was still in the deal, and reportedly it's still, or that he waited, so it's gone. It's still there for some crazy reason. I think that's the big reason why it would be on this list. That is on this list is because of the no trade clause. Because quite frankly, there's 3 players in the NBA right now that I think I'll put the no trade clause on, and there's about 5 or 6 in the past decade that I put the no trade clause on. The three currently are Jokic, Luka, and Giannis. The six in the past decade are those three: 2016 Steph Curry, LeBron ever, up until maybe like the past year, for example. I don't know. And then honestly, that might be it, right? So we're he's just simply not worth having the no trade clause. I do think, I mean, if you're Washington, I understand why they had to do it, but at the same time, in my opinion, it comes a point in time where, especially if you're in a Washington situation where Bradley Beal isn't gonna, push you over the top and help you with a championship right now, there comes a point in time where you have to decide, like, okay, what's the number that, yeah, if it gets too pricey, Bradley Beal, we love you, we're gonna honor you, but yeah, we're just gonna either trade you or just let you go. And not only did the Wizards make the mistake of paying Bradley Beal, but they also made the mistake of giving him no trade clause. So I don't know, man. One other quick honorable mention is gonna be Zach LaVine. It's really because of the length, and Zach LaVine just can't stay healthy. So the length isn't great. He does have some legitimate injury concerns, and I think with Zach LaVine, I think that's high end number two, low end number one money, if not more than that. And I just don't think I'm confident in saying Zach LaVine's a high end number two. I think he's a mid to low tier number two, high end number three. And I just don't know how I feel about paying Zach LaVine that kind of money. Maybe I'm lower on Zach LaVine. You guys can let me know down in the comments down below. Number three is Jeremy Grant. For one, the length is absurd. 5 years, $160 million. For two, you gave him a player option. So you're almost for sure locked in this deal. And number three, this just really doesn't make sense for your timeline, especially if Damian Lillard wants out and you are going to trade him at some point. This makes no sense. So you're kickstarting your rebuild by having a quality starter on the books for $30+ million for 5 years. Just bad value all the way across the board, in my opinion. I like Jeremy Grant. Go check out the Portland Trailblazers in-depth power rankings episode where I give my more, in-depth deep dive on Jeremy Grant, the player. But just, I mean, congrats to Jeremy Grant. And truly, congrats to all these guys for getting their money. I'm not ever going to criticize the players for getting the money. But I'm obviously going to be kind of critical of these front offices at times. Number two for me, it is Jalen Brown. And remember what I said like 30 seconds ago, maybe a little bit more than that, about, in my opinion, there comes a point in time when you're in extension talks with the homegrown talent where there has to be a number that goes out there and you're like, I'm sorry, we're going to either let you walk or we're going to trade you. Because I do think there are scenarios where letting a player walk is way better than deciding to overpay them. The best example of that, again, sorry, Bradley Beal, but it is Bradley Beal. Like, if the Wizards had decided to say, you know what, we'll just let you walk and let's go be bad for 2 years. They're 99% confident they're going to either get Paulo Banchero, Chet Holmgren, Scoot Henderson, or Victor Wembanyama, right? Can't believe I forgot that guy. The Boston Celtics are in that type of, situation where you could say, okay, cool, we're just better off letting you walk. But I do think you could have traded Jalen Brown. I really, really do think so. 5 years, 303 potentially $1 million. I think right now, and that's if the All NBA stuff clicks through, if I recall. But right now, Jalen Brown's still looking at one of the richest contracts, if not the richest contract extension in NBA history. Valued per spot track. Shout out to our buddy Keith Smith. 5 years, $288.26 million, to where you're going to pay Jalen Brown $60+ million for the last 2 years of that deal. And more than likely, if he gets All NBA this year, which is, I believe, the qualifier for that this upcoming year to fully max out, could be wrong. Fact check that. You could be paying him $60 million for the last 3 years. The only positive potentially that is you're going to be paying him that, more than likely at the peak of his powers in his prime. But the downside of that is he's just not a $60 million player. I don't even know how I quite feel. Okay, there's worse contracts out there, but $53 million next year or in 2 years, his age 28 season, 2025, 2026. I don't know how I feel about that. And I think there is a very real world where Jason Tatum could potentially leave. And I'm not even going to say to the Lakers, but just Jason Tatum leaving in general. And is Jalen Brown the dude you want to build around? Because you're essentially backing yourself into that corner if Jason Tatum does leave the summer of 2025, 2026, or heading into that following season. So the Celtics essentially have backed themselves into a corner where they kind of have to win in the next couple of years. Because if Jason Tatum does stick around, that's another $60+ million contract on the books. And building out a competitive roster with Giannis still in the conference is going to be increasingly more difficult. But easily the worst contract in the NBA, in my opinion right now, is Fred VanVleet. The best thing about this contract is you have a team option under it. But my gosh, it's just bad. It's bad for two reasons, but these are two pivotal reasons. One, a very similar, trend with these contracts in my eyes, at least, maybe outside of Kevin Durant. But like I said, I see a very real scenario where in a year, I don't think he's going to be worth it. But with Fred VanVleet, more than anybody else, maybe outside Jeremy Grant, just isn't worth that money. And kudos to the Toronto Raptors for just saying, yeah, that I'm good. I'm gonna let you walk, and we're gonna, have some point guard question marks for a year. But having a point guard question mark, and even then, Dennis Schroeder's a good point guard or a fine point guard, very capable, is a lot better than overpaying for Fred VanVleet, who for the Raptors, the drop off between Fred and Fred VanVleet's a better point guard. Do not get me wrong, but it's not absurd, right? Especially after the year Fred VanVleet just had. I don't think Fred is that poor of a shooter because he really had a down year shooting the ball, which really kind of impacted his value. But good on the Raptors for not overpaying for Fred VanVleet and saying, you know what? We'll take having point guard concerns for a year in Dennis Schroeder. And point guard concerns in air quotes there, because Dennis Schroeder is a fine point guard, and it's just not worth paying Fred VanVleet $40 million for multiple seasons. And then the second biggest problem I have with this contract is you are, to a certain extent, hindering the development of your two future franchise cornerstones of Jalen Green and Amen Thompson, who just spent the 4th overall pick on this season. Because say what you want, Fred VanVleet's going to have to play. And unfortunately, money, I think, does talk in the NBA in terms of minutes and things of that nature. That most definitely plays a factor. You're not going to bench a dude or play a guy you just paid $43 million, 12 minutes a night. So I think it could set some of the development back for some of these guys. And I don't know. I just don't like that move. You can justify the Dylan Brooks one to me. I just don't think you can really justify this one, especially at the length, because when you get to that team option, it's either going to be he's really, really good, and you kind of wasted I don't want to say wasted the 4th overall pick, but you know what I'm saying. Either he's really, really good, but even then, is he going to be $43 million worth good? Or B, you just overpaid him, which I think is going to be the case anyway. But front officers, I almost said Lakers Nation, but ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for watching. Leave a comment down below. What are your thoughts on my top 5 worst contracts in the NBA? And as always, subscribe right here. Till next time, see ya and stay safe.